You pull into the gas station. You tap your card. You watch the pump tick up $40, 50, 60, and it just keeps going. At some point, most of us have looked down at that screen and thought, there has to be a better way. Well, hey, maybe there is. And right now, a whole lot of Canadians are thinking the same thing. Welcome to True North EV. I'm your host, James, coming from you right here in Manitoba, Canada, where we actually talk about what it actually looks like going electric here in Canada with our winters, our wide open spaces, and yes, our wild gas prices. Today's episode is a big one. We are covering the surge in EVs, in EV interest happening across Canada right now. What the numbers actually look like, a full breakdown of the new federal rebate program and which vehicles qualify, the barriers that still exist, the plug-in hybrid conversation, and something I'm genuinely excited to dig into today, a dedicated deep dive into the used EV market, because that story is being underreported and it is absolutely worth your attention. So buckle up, or I guess plug in, because we've got a lot of ground to cover. Let's get rolling. All right, let's set the scene, because what's happening at the pump right now is genuinely significant. As of April 2026, the national average of gasoline in Canada is sitting at approximately $1.82 per liter. And here's the part that really stings. Gas prices jumped as much as 47 cents per liter in a single month earlier this month. This is not a gradual creep. This is a gut punch. Why is this happening? The short version, global oil markets are under pressure. The ongoing Iran conflict has sent crude prices upward internationally. Canada is tied to those global markets, and layered on top of that, you've got the Canadian dollar, refinery capacity, and regional distribution costs all doing their part to make that number at the roadside sign feel very personal, very fast. The result? People who had never seriously considered an EV are now Googling. People who had been vaguely curious are now actually walking into dealerships. And people who dismissed EVs entirely are at least having the conversation. Industry insiders say the EV and hybrid interest tends to reignite meaningfully when gas hits that $1.70 to $1.30 per liter mark. We are at $1.82 nationally and climbing in some regions. We are living the tipping point. I came across a quote from Sam Eldar, a Toronto business owner with a fleet of construction trucks, who told BNN Bloomberg that gas prices have simply never been this high in all his years of driving. When you're fueling a whole fleet of trucks, that kind of pain converts quickly. Let's get the numbers, because this is where it gets really interesting. First, search volume. On Clutch.ca, one of Canada's used car platforms, searches for electric vehicles grew at 5 times the rate of overall vehicle shopping earlier this year. But that's not even the most striking stat. The Globe and Mail reported that EV search volumes on Clutch.ca jumped 94% between January and late March of this year. Let that one land for a second. Nearly double the searches in just a few months. Canadians are actively hunting for EVs in a way that simply was not happening 12 months ago. Second, insurance quotes. Rates.ca saw a 40% increase in EV insurance quotes requests in March 2026 compared to the previous year. When someone is getting an insurance quote, they are not just browsing. They are seriously considering a purchase. Third, registration numbers in Alberta. Alberta Transportation reported just 3,527 EVs registered in the province in 2021. By 2025, that number was nearly 20,000. 19,863 to be exact. That's roughly 460% increase in 4 years. And again, this is Alberta, the heart of Canada's oil patch. The fact that EV enthusiasm is growing there is genuinely meaningful. Alberta also had 84,564 hybrid vehicles registered in 2025, a number that tells its own story about where people are at. Interested in reducing fuel costs, but wanting options. It's kind of like what I've always been told. As a dealer, you don't use your own merchandise. So I feel like that's the way Alberta should be. They should be the biggest growing EV user. Nationally, about 30% of Canadians say they're open to or interested in an EV. According to the 2026 survey, 1 in 3 Canadians. That's a foundation you could build a market on. And in Quebec, which leads the country in EV adoption, thanks to low electricity rates, there's been an immediate rebound in sales this spring following reinstated provincial subsidies. Quebec is always the clearest example of what happens when you stack good policy with affordable electricity. Okay, I want to spend real time on this because the federal incentive landscape has changed, and I want to make sure every listener understands what is currently available. The old IZEV program has been replaced by the Electric Vehicle Affordability Program, EVAP, which launched on February 16th, 2026. This is the program that matters right now. Here's how it works. Up to $5,000 back for new fully electric vehicles, battery electric vehicles, and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. Up to $2,500 back for new plug-in hybrid electric vehicles or PHEVs. So we do have an important caveat. These amounts are set to decrease annually through 2030. The government is phasing this out over 5 years, so the incentive is strongest right now. If you've been sitting on the fence, that's a reason to move sooner rather than later. Now, eligibility. For most vehicles, the final transaction price needs to be $50,000 or less. And here's the smart change that was made with the EVAP program. It's based on what you actually pay after negotiations, not just the sticker price. So if a vehicle is listed at $51,000, but you negotiate it to $49,500, it could qualify. That is a more realistic rule. Vehicles built in Canada have no price cap. If it's made here, it qualifies regardless of MSRP. That matters for a few key models. And demonstrator vehicles with fewer than 10,000 kilometers are still considered new for the EVAP purposes. A demo might be your sweet spot. Slightly discounted, still rebate eligible. That is what mine was, although it had just started that journey, so it only had 1,300 kilometers on it. So let's go through the models. I know this is what you actually want. So fully electric, up to $5,000. So the 2026 Chevrolet Equinox EV, the base MSRP is $46,199. One of the most in-demand EVs in Canada right now for good reason. Practical and well-priced. The 2026 Tesla Model Y rear-wheel drive qualifies in certain configurations at $49,990, right at the limit, so verify the trim you're looking at. The 2026 Hyundai Kona Electric starts at approximately $43,999, great for city and suburban drivers. And hey, I had a Kona 2019. It was smaller than the current Kona Electrics. It did amazing road trips, so you could do it on road trip. Depends how many people you got. The 2026 Kia EV4, around $38,995. One of the most affordable new EVs on the Canadian market, and absolutely worth a look if budget is a priority. The only thing I have complaints about on this vehicle is where the climate control info shows up. For me at least, it gets all hidden behind the steering wheel. But other than that, this was a great car to drive. The 2025-2026 Dodge Charger Daytona, it's built in Ontario, so no price cap. And yes, it still has that muscle car identity. If you want an EV with personality, This one is a conversation. Now, let's look at some PHEVs. Up to $2,500 rebate on these. You got the 2026 Chrysler Pacifica plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, the family minivan option. Built in Ontario, again, no price cap. You got the 2026 Toyota Prius Prime. That starts at around $40,000 and $40,050. The 2026 Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV, near the price cap at $48,698. Worth negotiating carefully here. And the Mitsubishi has that great warranty, 10-year warranty. So if you're kind of first trying to kind of dip your toes into the water, that might be a good way to go. And here is something I want you to hear clearly. These federal rebates can be stacked with provincial programs. Quebec's Roulez Vert adds up to $1,000 on top of the federal amount. That means a Quebec buyer on a qualifying EV could see up to $9,000 off. Same with Manitoba and their rebate. Other provinces do have their own programs too. Check what's available where you live and don't leave money on the table. The full current EVAP vehicle list lives on Transport Canada's website, which I'll link it in the show notes. But again, always verify before you buy. So let's talk real dollars, because the financial case for going electric has never been stronger. And the numbers are worth saying out loud. Nino DeCara from Electric Autonomy Canada put it plainly. The cost of electricity versus gasoline right now is simply not close. Charging an EV is minuscule by comparison, and more importantly, stable. You're not walking up Monday nervously checking whether gas jumped overnight because of something happening on the other side of the planet. Here's a number I want you to sit with. Driving approximately 20,000 kilometers a year in an EV costs roughly $504 in electricity. The same distance in a comparable gas vehicle costs approximately $2,720 in gas. That's a savings of over $2,200 per year, every year. And maintenance? Because EVs have far fewer moving parts. No oil changes, no spark plugs, no timing belt. EV maintenance costs are typically 40 to 50% cheaper than a gas vehicle over time. No oil changes alone will save you a few $100s a year. Now, look at the 5-year picture. Here is a rough comparison based on 20,000 kilometers per year of Canadian driving in 2026. Fuel and power over 5 years, about $2,500 for an EV versus about $13,600 for a gas car. Maintenance over 5 years, roughly $3,000 for an EV versus $6,000 for a gas car. Total operating costs over 5 years is approximately $5,500 for an EV versus $19,600 for a gas car. That's a difference of $14,000 in 5 years of driving, even accounting for the higher upfront purchase price. And the average new EV does cost about $7,250 more than a comparable gas vehicle before rebates. The math starts looking very different over time, especially once you start throwing in the rebates. You subtract your federal and provincial rebates, factor in the lower operating costs, and the total cost of ownership picture becomes genuinely compelling. Now, price is still a real barrier for many Canadians. The average new EV in Canada runs between $50,000 and $70,000. Not everyone can swing that, but there is a growing answer to that problem. And it brings me to the next segment I am most excited about today. Okay, let's talk about used EVs, because I genuinely believe this is one of the most underreported and underappreciated stories in the Canadian automotive world right now. And the timing has never been better. Let me start with the headline stat. Between January and late March of this year, EV search volume on Clutch.ca jumped 94%, nearly doubled. In 3 months, Canadians are not just looking at new EVs. They are hunting for used ones in massive numbers. And the good news is, the supply is there to meet them. Why is there suddenly so much supply? Here's what's happening. Back in 2022, 23, and 2024, a lot of EVs were sold and leased. Those leases typically run 2 to 3 years. That means right now in 2026, we are seeing a surge of off-lease EVs flooding the used market, up approximately 230% compared to recent years. There are simply a lot of used EVs coming available all at once. That is great news for buyers. And because of that supply surge, combining with some cooling in new EV demand over the past year, used EV prices have dropped significantly. We're talking price reductions in the range of 11 to 33%, depending on the model and year. That is real money off the price of a vehicle that is already saving you thousands in operating costs. The second car strategy, and why it's brilliant for Canadians, families. Here's an idea that I think is really worth exploring. And it's one that the Globe and Mail and the Financial Post have been writing about lately. For families or households with 2 vehicles, using a used EV as a daily commuter and errand car while keeping a gas or hybrid vehicle for longer trips is an increasingly popular approach. And the math is excellent work. Think about it this way. Most daily driving in Canada, commuting to work, school runs, groceries, local errands, fits comfortably within the range of even older, cheaper EVs. A used Nissan Leaf or Chevy Bolt that you might pick up for $15,000 or $22,000 right now handles that beautifully. You're charging at home overnight, spending about $40 to $50 a month on electricity instead of $150 or $200 in grocery or in gas for those same trips. Your other vehicles handles the longer highway drives or road trips where range matters more. It's described as a middle ground approach. And for Canadians who aren't quite ready to go full electric but desperately want to escape the pain at the pump for their daily driving, it genuinely checks a lot of boxes. Maybe after driving the EV for errands, you start to get a little more comfortable with it and use it for road trips, or you get another longer range, better charging EV for road trips. It's just awesome to hear stories like that because I've heard it actually a few times. Actually, my old Hyundai Kona Electric has kind of become that story. So now I want to be honest here, because buying a used EV is not quite the same as buying a used gas car. There are some specific things you need to be aware of. So battery health is a big one. And here's the good news first. A UK firm called Generational tested over 8,000 EVs and found that average battery health was 95.15%, significantly better than most people expect. Even vehicles in the 3 to 4 year range were averaging around 95% capacity, and EVs with over 160,000 kilometers still frequently came in between 88 and 95% of their original capacity. The research concluded the battery degradation is simply not the systemic risk it was once assumed to be, and that, in most cases, the battery is likely to outlast the vehicle itself. That said, the range of outcomes does widen as vehicles get older, and how a battery was treated matters a lot. Frequent fast charging, regular running the battery down close to empty, and living through cold climates like ours can all accelerate degradation, especially on older models with less advanced battery chemistry. So 2 vehicles from the same year can look identical on paper, but tell very different stories under the hood. The takeaway, mileage alone is not a reliable indicator of battery health. Before you buy any used EV, get a pre-purchase battery state a health inspection from an EV familiar mechanic if you are able to. I know here in Winnipeg, I don't know of any even, so there is options with Teslas, with Nissan Leafs, so there is ways to get that information. Even with the Kona, there's ways to do it. So know what you're actually buying, because a battery replacement on an older model can cost more than that car is worth. But on the plus side, my Nissan Leaf, I got a 2014 Nissan Leaf. It has 100 and almost up to, it's right now just under 200,000 kilometers. I got it, I last looked when it was about 190,000 kilometers, and I still had like 73% of my battery. And this is an older EV that doesn't have all the lovely battery heating, cooling, all that. So the battery is something to worry about, but it's not like a massive thing. Charging setup matters. To get the full financial benefit of a used EV, you really want to be charging at home with a level 2 charger, the kind you have installed in your garage or on your house. The math I showed up you earlier at $504 per year in electricity for 20,000 kilometers is based on home charging at residential electricity rates. Public fast charging is typically 3 to 4 times more expensive than home electricity. It's still cheaper than gas sometimes, but the savings are much bigger when you're mostly charging at home overnight. Now, if you do happen to also look at a older Nissan Leaf or whatever, some of those, like mine, can handle 120 charging. Summer, winter, doesn't matter, and it will charge it up. So if you don't do much driving or whatnot, maybe it's still worth it to do 120 charging. Insurance costs. This is one worth flagging because it catches some buyers off guard. EV insurance premiums in Canada can run up to 36.8% higher than for equivalent gas vehicles. Why? Higher repair costs. The sensors, cameras, and high-tech components on modern EVs cost more to fix after a collision. When you're budgeting for a used EV, factor in insurance into your total cost of ownership picture. Although in provinces like Manitoba that the auto insurance is a crown corporation, it is not nearly as big of a spread. As far as I have seen, there is no difference other than the person's driving record and the price of the vehicle itself. So, we also have the cold weather range reduction. This one is uniquely Canadian and critically important. Canadian winters can reduce an EV's real-world range by 25 to 40%. A vehicle with a rated 300 kilometers of range might deliver as little as 180 kilometers on a very cold Manitoba or Saskatchewan day. That's not a flaw, it's physics, but it's something you absolutely need to account for when evaluating whether a particular used EV range works for your situation. A range that looks comfortable in a California-based review might be tight during a Winnipeg January, although the gas vehicles also use more fuel in those temperatures and conditions, and they sometimes struggle to start, where I have yet to have an EV struggle on any of these cold days. And again, I don't have a garage. So which used EVs are worth looking at? For a second vehicle or daily commuter with modest range needs, a used Nissan Leaf is one of the most affordable options out there. Earlier generations have limited range but are extremely reliable and cheap to run, so they're great for your short to medium daily driving. A used Chevrolet Bolt EV, particularly the 2020 to 2023 models, offers more range, around 400 kilometers when new, and is a solid all-arounder. Post-recall, the battery issues have been addressed, and it holds up well. A used Hyundai Kona Electric or Kia Niro EV, these are often coming off leases now and represent a sweet spot of range, reliability, and value. It's worth hunting for. For those who want a used EV as a primary vehicle and need more range, you have a used Tesla Model 3, still sets the benchmark for long-range performance in the used market. Prices have come down meaningfully, sometimes quite a bit, and they tend to hold up well over time. A used Volkswagen ID4, a newer model in the used market, is starting to appear with decent range and a very practical SUV format. I know people that have it, that love it. They have a massage feature in the driver's seat. I just swear by it. It's the greatest thing ever. So one more thing on used EVs. While the federal EVAP program is focused on new vehicles, some provinces still offer rebates on used EVs. Manitoba, for example, has a $2,500 provincial rebate for eligible used electric vehicles. If you're in Manitoba or another province with used EV incentives, that's additional money off an already discounted vehicle. Check your provincial program. The used EV market in Canada right now is genuinely one of the best opportunities I've seen for people who want to reduce their fuel costs without the full price tag of a new vehicle. It's real, it's here, and it's growing fast. All right, I'm not here to be a cheerleader without giving you the full picture. Even with everything going in EVs' favor right now, there are real barriers that affect real Canadians. Let's name them honestly. One is the upfront costs. Even with the used market improving and rebates available, a new EV still can cost on average than a comparable gas vehicle before incentives. For many families, that is simply not bridgeable right now. This is the number one reason people who are interested don't pull the trigger. Although I will say that the average price of any new vehicle right now, gas or electric, is about 65 grand. Number two, charging anxiety, especially in rural and northern Canada. About 30% of Canadians interested in EVs cite concerns about finding a place to charge as a top barrier. And in many parts of our country, that concern is justified. The charging network in major cities is solid. On remote highways, in northern communities, and in many rural areas, the gaps are real. Andrew Bastiuk of the Electric Vehicle Association of Alberta noted that while Grand Prairie now has charging coverage, Fort McMurray does not. For people who regularly drive those routes, a fully electric vehicle is not yet a practical primary car. The federal government's recent $11 million commitment to new charging stations is progress, but Canada needs billions invested over the coming decade to truly make EV ownership practical everywhere. We're not yet there. Be honest with yourself about your specific driving patterns before committing. Although we are seeing more provincial governments stepping up and funding to get chargers in, like Manitoba Hydro putting chargers in going up to Thompson, and BC Hydro installing chargers approximately every 150 kilometers. So I think we will see some really fast improvements coming soon. Also, look at how many times you do road trips going up to these more remote areas. If it's a trip that you do once a year, maybe it still makes sense to get an electric vehicle and just rent a vehicle for that 1 or 2 trips. 3. Cold weather range loss. As I mentioned in the used EV section, Canadian winters can cut range by 25 to 40%. This is real, and it matters especially when you're evaluating range on older used EVs. Modern EVs with larger batteries handle this better than old models, and thermal battery management has improved a lot. But it's always a factor, and in provinces like Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and northern Quebec. 4. Most Canadians have never driven one. Over 50% of Canadians have never sat behind the wheel of an EV. That is a major driver of hesitation. People fear what they don't know, and EVs are genuinely different to drive. The instant torque, the quiet, the one-pedal driving experience. Most people who drive one for the first time are surprised at how much they enjoy it. The product really does sell itself. The barrier is just getting people into the car. If you haven't driven one yet, find a way to do that before forming a firm opinion. 5. Insurance costs. EV insurance can run up to 36.8% higher than gas vehicles in Canada. That's a real cost that sometimes gets left out of the switching to EV saves money conversation. Factor it into your full picture. Let me spend a few minutes on PHEVs, plug-in hybrids, because I think they deserve more attention than they get. And for a lot of Canadians, they are the smartest possible first step. In British Columbia, hybrid sales surpassed full EV sales in 2025. Hybrids at 20.9% of new vehicle sales versus 18.3% for fully electric. Consumers are telling us something with those numbers. They want to move toward electrification, but they want a safety net. And a PHEV gives you exactly that. Most modern PHEVs offer between 50 and 80 kilometers of electric-only range, which covers the vast majority of daily Canadian driving. If you can plug in at a home overnight, you could be doing almost all of your commuting, errands, and school runs entirely on electricity. The gas engine mostly just sits there waiting. Then, when you've got that long weekend trip to the lake, or you're driving across the province, or you're in the community where fast chargers are scarce, the gas engine kicks in and you're fine. No stress, no range calculation, no searching for chargers is not a compromise. For the right driver, In the right situation, it is generally the optimal vehicle. And with up to $2,500 back from EVAP on eligible models and more from provincial programs on top of that, the financial case is real. If you're unsure whether a full EV or PHEV is right for your life, it's exactly the kind of conversation worth having. And it's exactly what we do at True North EV Consulting. But more on that in a minute. Let me give you a quick panoramic view of what else is shaping the Canadian EV landscape right now. So we have the EVAP launch. It's generally re-energized the market. People who weren't seriously shopping are now doing homework. The rates.ca and Clutch.ca data backs that up decisively. Chinese EVs entering Canada. Prime Minister Carney announced that up to 49,000 Chinese-made EVs per year will be allowed in at a 6% tariff rate. From a consumer standpoint, the potential for more affordable EVs at lower price points could bring electric vehicles within reach for Canadians who currently can't afford what's on the lot. It also might help drive other prices down of other vehicles. We got the trade war uncertainty. The broader Canada-US trade tensions are creating real turbulence. Some automakers have paused or adjusted EV production plans. The path to electrification is not perfectly smooth, but the destination is not in question. Everyone in the industry still calls electrification the North Star of transportation. The used market is the story of 2026. I've said it already, but it bears repeating. Record supply from off-lease returns. Prices down 11 to 33%. Searches up 94%. If you've been waiting for the right moment to enter the EV market without paying new vehicle prices, that moment is now. Quick but important. Canada is not the US, and it's not Norway. Our EV conversation has to be rooted in our own reality. We have brutal winters that affect battery performance in ways mild climate reviews don't capture. We have enormous distances between cities. We have massive provincial differences in electricity rates, grid composition, and incentive programs. And we have a very real and very justified by Canadian sentiment right now given the trade environment. Adasu Lashtu? Sorry if I'm butchering the name. At McMaster University made the point that Norway hit 90% plus EV adoption because of two things: high fuel prices and affordable EV options. Canada right now has the first condition in full force. As the second condition improves through a maturing used market, new affordable models, and potentially lower cost imports, we may be heading toward our own inflection point. Your local EV community is one of the best resources you have for navigating all of this in a Canadian context. If you're in Manitoba, check out the Manitoba Electric Vehicle Association at manitobaev.ca. You got real people, real roads, real winters. The advice you'll get there is grounded in your actual situation. Now, I want to take a minute to talk about something I care deeply about, which is helping people actually make this transition. Not just understand it intellectually, but actually do it in a way that feels right for their life. A lot of people have reached out to me and said things like, I want to go electric, but I have no idea where to start. Or I can't figure out whether a PHEV or full EV makes more sense for me. Or I live in a condo, can I even charge an EV? Or I've seen the savings numbers, but I don't know if they apply to my situation. These are all completely legitimate questions. And figuring it out on your own from scratch while navigating rebate programs and dealerships and charging options and home installation requirements, it's a lot. That's exactly why I started True North EV Consulting. What I do is simple. I work one-on-one with you to figure out which plug-in hybrid or fully electric vehicle actually fits your life, your driving patterns, your budget, your home setup, your climate, your needs. Then I walk you through every single step of the process. From that first conversation where we map out what you need, to evaluating specific vehicles, to understanding exactly which rebates and incentives you qualify for, to navigating the purchase, to getting a home EV charger properly installed. Start to finish, we're with you the whole way. The goal is simple: by the time you drive that EV home, you feel completely confident. Not second guessing, not overwhelmed, not wondering if you made the right call. You made the right call, and you'll know it. If that's something you need, I'd genuinely love to connect. Visit us at truenorthev.ca, email us at truenorthev@gmail.com, or find us at Facebook or on Facebook at truenorthev. Making the switch to electric doesn't have to be complicated. That's what we're here for. So before I wrap things up, 5 things I want to just keep on your radar. 1, the EVAP vehicle list. It updates regularly. Check it at Transport Canada before you shop. Don't assume a vehicle or trim qualifies. The link is in the show notes. 2, your provincial incentives. Stack them. Manitoba Electric Vehicle Rebate Program is up to $1,000 on top of federal. Other provinces have their own programs. Don't leave money on the table. 3, used EV inventory. On platforms like Clutch.ca and autotrader.ca, the inventory is building. Set up alerts for the models you're interested in. Used EV prices are dropping and selection is expanding. Strike while supply is high. 4, the Chinese EV situation. How the 49,000 vehicles per year policy plays out will affect the affordable EV market in Canada significantly over the next 1 or 2 years. It's definitely worth watching, especially if you're planning to buy in that $30,000 to $40,000 range. 5, charging infrastructure. Watch where the federal $11 million and future investments are going. If you're in an underserved community, your local EV association and municipality may be able to advocate for investments. Get involved if that matters to you. Now, before I let you go, if you are not listening to Kilowatt, the podcast hosted by Bodie, please go find it right now and subscribe. I will be fully honest with you, Bodie is more knowledgeable about EVs than I will probably ever be. His show is deep, well-researched, and just genuinely excellent. He breaks down the news and quarterly reports so nicely. I learn things from listening to Kilowatt all the time. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of True North EV. We've covered a lot today. With gas at $1.82 and what's behind it. The data showing Canadian EV interest surging, 94% search volume jump, 40% more insurance quotes, Alberta's near 500% growth in EV registrations, the new EVAP federal rebate program, and exactly which vehicles qualify. The full financial case for going electric, including that 5-year $14,000 difference in operating costs, a dive on the used EV market, the supply surge, the price drops, the second car strategy, and what to watch out for. The PHEV conversation, the honest barriers, the bigger market picture, and the key message I want you to take away. Whether you're ready to buy a new EV, considering a used one as a second vehicle, or just starting to ask questions, this is a genuinely great time to be curious. The market is improving fast, the incentives are real, the operating savings are real, and you don't have to figure it out alone. If you want help navigating it personally, True North EV Consulting is here to help you. We help individuals and families find the right EV or PHEV for their lives and walk them through every step of the process, from the first question all the way to the home charging on your wall. Find us at truenorthev.ca, email truenorthev@gmail.com, or on Facebook at True North EV. And connect with the Manitoba Electric Vehicle Association at manitobaev.ca for real-world EV community and resources. And before you go, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review. It really helps other EV enthusiasts find our show. And if you have a topic you'd like us to cover, send us your suggestions. This show is for all of us. Thanks for listening to True North EV. I'm James, and we'll talk to you next time.